Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our February 6th iteration of our Trade and Tariff webinar. My name is Michelle Conley. I'm the Senior Director of Partnerships at World Trade Center, Utah. And for those who've seen me before, I'm obviously not in my office today. I am at the Silicon Slopes Summit taking place over at the Salt Palace. They're a great sister organization of ours. If you haven't had a chance to check out the summit, you should totally make your way over here today. They've got a lot of great speakers still today and some events tomorrow. And if you need a ticket, hit us up. World Trade Center Utah can help hook you up with one. But for this morning, excited to present today's trade and tariff webinar for you. As always, we'll get to hear from my great colleague, Ben Kolendar, on what has happened this last week in tariffs. It's been an eventful week, especially with India. And then I'm excited, our guest speaker today is from the Utah Inland Port Authority. Really great organization in Utah that's been around for a little bit, but the way that they've transformed and really enhanced their work over the last year or so has been super impressive and interesting to me, and I think will be of interest to all of you. Sebastian Abril is the director of air cargo over there, and they're doing a lot of work within logistics and air cargo and things like that really impact what's going on with supply chains and how all of you are shipping your products. And so excited for you to hear from Sebastian, as well as his colleagues, Lynne and Scott, who will also be joining. As a reminder, we record these every week, and you can check them out on our YouTube page, which should be in the chat. And please feel free to jump in and ask questions using the Q&A function. For now, I will turn it over to Ben. What happened this week, Ben?
Thanks, Michelle. I'm going to mix it up a little bit this week. I'm going to do things a little bit differently. First off, we get a lot of questions about the Supreme Court case, and I'm just going to walk our audience through what we're seeing here. I'm going to share my screen in terms of, maybe you're curious about what dates are or what's upcoming. So there's a little calendar info here. You could go to supremecourt.gov. I'm pitching the Supreme Court's website instead of ours for once, but there's so much chatter on this, it's really helpful to be aware. And you can see the calendar here for upcoming, dates for various things: argument, non-argument, conference days, whatnot. And so you could see here what the potential days are that these tariffs may be ultimately decided. The 2 days to target here are argument days and non-argument days. So you can see right here, the 20th is the next potential day, and then 23rd, 24th, 25th are also potential days. And you can see in the calendar info key here, it sort of gives a walkthrough of you know, argument days. What we're really looking for is announcement of opinions. So that can happen on argument days, that can happen on non-argument days. So those are the conference days. You don't really see as much action happening in terms of releases of opinions. So those are what we're monitoring. And again, you could go to supremecourt.gov. You could see that calendar there. So all to say, we do not have an update from the Supreme Court this week. We will likely not see one next week as well. And we know that because we're looking at the Supreme Court's calendar. Um, I'm gonna just, in the nature of sharing my screen on something different. We've been talking about the poly market every week, not because we're encouraging betting, but it's a good measurement of like what people are thinking in terms of the likelihood of these tariffs becoming, or the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Trump tariff. So I just have a screen up here just so we talked through since the announcement. We've been looking at the different ranges and potential likelihood that these tariffs are going to be the Supreme Court are going to side on the side of the tariffs becoming legal. Today we're at 33%, which is on the very high side of what we've seen at least since the oral arguments. So before the oral arguments, we saw it up as high as 59% and 48% right before the oral arguments. And so we've seen typically a fluctuation between 23 and 32% since the oral arguments. We're up to 33% today. And a trend that we've seen is the longer that this goes on, the more the higher the likelihood is that people are guessing that the Supreme Court is going to decide in favor of Trump's tariffs. So just something to be aware of. I'm going to pull up our dashboard now and now get into the regularly scheduled program. of our updates on our dashboard. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, wtcutah.com/tariffs, we've dropped that in the chat as well. You could share this link with others who you think may benefit from these updates, these weekly updates, by sharing that link because the webinar link is right here that you could register, as many of you know and who are joining us here. So, um, jumping into the updates, we have a few significant updates this week. The first one is, um, you know, uh, just something to monitor. We saw some threats that Korea wasn't making fast enough progress on our trade deal with them, and that we were going to increase the tariffs at one point. That was almost immediately pulled back by the White House. And we've seen some progress on the Korea side. So they've announced that their parliament is going to finalize a bill on the U.S. investment fund by March 9th. So that is a signal of progress out of Korea and likely why that update to the White House probably pulled back some of those sharp tones on increasing tariffs for lack of progress. So we see some progress there that was announced. We've also um, seen an announcement. The Federal Register was released in terms of the any nation supplying oil to Cuba. So this has been an administrative priority recently. It's been a lot in the news, especially since Venezuela, that we have a lot of countries such as Venezuela and others supplying oil to Cuba. Um, there haven't been any details released in terms of what the tariff levels will be for anybody doing shipping oil to Cuba. But what we are hearing is, that there are going to be several cabinet secretaries involved in the decision. So the Secretary of State is going to make a recommendation on the tariff level for any country doing shipping oil to Cuba, but it will be in consultation with Treasury, Homeland Security, and USTR. So, about this one, this is going to be similar to the Russian oil situation where we're going to monitor and we likely will see countries threatened over time on this specific tariff item. I'm going to read some countries to you that are most at risk of being hit with this tariff. First and foremost, Mexico, then Venezuela, Russia, and even Algeria are some of the ones that we're tracking as potential countries which may end up being subject to this or at least threatened with this tariff. So, something to keep on your radar. Um, the next item, of course, we mentioned the Supreme Court already. Um, we're going to move on from the Supreme Court update. We're going to talk about India for just a second. So, um, this week, or last week, we had mentioned in our webinar that the EU now completing their trade deal with India likely clears a path for the US to continue our negotiations with India. That very thing happened. We have an announced deal with India. We're pending formal documentation on this deal. But what we're seeing is, in the range, a little on the high end of the range of what we were anticipating this deal resulting in. So, um, what the deal does is a few things. One, it brings down the effective tariff rate or the tariff rate on India from 50% of the IEPA tariffs down to 18%. So it eliminates 25% on Russian oil and brings the benchmark IEPA rate of 25% down to 18. So that's quite a significant decrease. We do not have dates on that yet. We don't have any formal documentation, but that is the announced deal. Um, and along those lines, there are two key commitments that India has provided. The first is that they are going to look into removing non-tariff barriers for U.S. products going into India. So anyone exporting to India knows that this is one of the bigger issues with the U.S. is that non-tariff barriers are key in India. And the second thing is, just an ongoing dialogue about Russian oil. And so India has been reining back their shipments of Russian oil, or they have been reining back their procurement of Russian oil into India, which has resulted in that reduction in the 25% tariff for doing business with Russia and importing Russian oil. So that's a lot. I know, but those are the updates that we're tracking this week for everyone. So back to you, Michelle.
Thanks so much, Ben. Yeah, a big week. I've said before, I keep waiting for a week when there's nothing to talk about in tariffs, and so far that hasn't happened. And this week is the opposite. There's a lot going on. Thanks for that update on the Supreme Court as well. I know as we're out talking with businesses, that's everyone's question. So it'd be nice if we all knew when that was actually going to happen, but we'll keep you all posted. If there are any questions for Ben, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I'm happy to turn it over to our partners over at the Utah Inland Port Authority. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, Sebastian Abril is a close partner of ours. He oversees freight and logistics for the inland port, and he's joined by his colleagues Lynne Mayers and Scott Wolford to share more about the services that they provide. So, Sebastian, Lynne, and Scott, take it from here, please.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate it. Just wanted to go ahead and I'll go ahead and do an air cargo update on what's happening at the tail end. But if respect, I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Wolford. And Scott, if you have a presentation ability, go ahead and take it away.
I do. I hope I do. I'm going to do the inland port in 3 minutes. Let's see, get this shared. 3 minutes or less, and you can put me on the timer. And I probably won't make it, but I'm going to give a good try. This is just an overview of what we're kind of working on. Is can everyone see that? Someone give me. I can't even see a thumbs up. Give me an audible. Yes, we can see
You're
that.
good, Scott.
Thank you. The primary tool of the Inland Port Authority is called a project area. It creates a tax layer, which allows us to extract property tax and reinvest it into infrastructure or incentives for businesses to locate, or more importantly for this conversation, to expand in the state. We now have 14 project areas across the state, with our newest being in West Utah County, the communities of Fairfield and Cedar Fort, and before that, San Juan County down south. That represents partnerships really from more than 40 communities across the state, with the county shaded in green, and the cities who we're partners with labeled with the dot there. We've seen significant growth. We're up to about 140,000 acres. The concentric circles on this represent not only have we created a project area, but our partners have come back and said, can we please expand the area of the project area to other parcels? Because we've got a great company that wants to expand, and we want to help incentivize to make that happen faster. We have responded on 508 to date. That's as of yesterday. Requests for information or organic leads to contact businesses. That represents a little bit out of date, but I still like the chart where in the state we're chasing, or on whose behalf we're chasing industry to grow. Those 508 represent 284 unique projects, with about half coming from our partners at EDC Utah. GoEd they've entered that arena, and they're up to about 20%. NUI is a good partner, and we're getting leads from just all over the place that we love chasing. Active projects, we run between 60 and 90 at any given time. The number one state of a lead is ghosted. People just kind of stop talking to us, and that's okay. But what we find is the ones that are organic to the state, businesses who are already doing business in the state, good for the community, we have a really high win rate on getting that expansion to happen, getting an incentive to come through. The wins that we have so far, and we don't want to call them wins because it sounds like we're tooting our own horn, but the commitments that we've received to expand or to locate represent just about $5 billion of committed CapEx into the communities. That's about 3.9 million square feet of industrial space and just over 4,100 jobs. Again, those are projected and mostly unrealized at this point. This is a super fun XY chart that I won't explain too far, but the x-axis being the projection of new jobs and the y-axis being the committed capital expense that they're going to spend. While we're happy to chase the whales that ruin the scale of my chart, like the Fossil Rock Mine and Fervo Energy, there's kind of a sweet spot of a 25 to 50 or even lower $1 million CapEx and 10, 12, 15 jobs, which rural Utah can absorb. Those are really interesting. Those are the bedrock of those local economies, and we love working with those. I'm going to call them more modest but critically important jobs. These are all those 508 that we've chased it, and you can kind of see that cluster where we're happy operating in that kind of sweet spot. We currently have 4 associate vice presidents that carve up the state to support the project areas that they oversee, and we just closed recruitment for a 5th AVP that's going to take a little bit of pressure off Jenna Draper and Denny Stewart. Things that we've been doing. Here, there's our good friend Sebastian. We have partnered with Salt Lake Airport, Delta Airlines, on a Salt Lake to Incheon flight. We incentivized South Rail's expansion in the northwest quadrant of Salt Lake City. We incentivized Ash Grove Cement Plant just outside of Leamington in Juab County. We bought a landfill, and then we hired Mark Nord to develop it. We helped bring Unitech Manufacturing, expanding. They're still in the northwest quadrant of Salt Lake, but down to Beaver County, 50 new jobs for that community, which are fantastic. We incentivized Lakeshore Learning. We were neck and neck with Phoenix, Arizona, and that economic powerhouse, Garland, Utah, landed those 400 jobs. Lakeshore Learning is operational, hiring, and spreading learning materials and all sorts of fun stuff over the country already. We work to bring AirBuild to Green River, Utah, which not only helps with sewer needs, infrastructure, but also 15 new jobs and $9.5 million of CapEx. We have a PID created to expand the Ephraim Crossing project, which will bring homes, industry. We're hoping cold storage to Ephraim, Utah, and Snow College. And you may be asking, how could I get involved with this? We would love to talk. If you're an industry that's looking at expanding, especially in the industrial space, or want to talk logistics and how we can help get your products in or out faster, better, cleaner, we'd love to chat with you. And I'd be happy to turn it back over to Sebastian, and I'll hang around to ask any questions if they come up. How was I close to 3? How'd I do?
Solid, Scott. Solid to the T. Thank you guys so much. I'll share my screen here if somebody can just let me know if you can see it. Yep. Great. Broadcasting live from a Les Schwab. I appreciate it. My tires and brakes decided to have a series of unfortunate events just ahead of this call. So like all things, we're supporting a good local business here. I'm really happy that business development got to join me on this call. I pushed pretty hard for it. And it was, Scott said a key word, bedrock. What the logistics division does here at the Inland Port could not be done without business development. They're the cornerstone of the organization, and then we get to go ahead and take their hard work of integrating with the community and really doing some cool things with it. So I want to give you an air cargo update and show you what's been happening with some of those cool things that we've been able to do as an organization. So you may have already known this, but we started back last year a direct route to ICN, and this was a really consequential route. There's something in air cargo terminology for the aircraft called a narrow body and a wide body. Most of the connections that we have with aircraft are smaller aircraft called narrow bodies. And so when you get a lane like this, an international lane, that's a wide body, it means that freight forwarders, organizations like yours, if you're shipping internationally, get to go ahead and put much more volume on these aircraft. And so this was the first connection in almost 20 years, a direct connection back to Asia, and it started off with a daily flight, and it's wildly successful. So we are really happy from both the passenger side and the cargo side. The port was really happy to contribute to this. We provided Delta with the first of its kind, and we're hearing it's the first of the kind, not only to Delta, but in the country, anywhere. Period. A $300,000 grant to just market cargo. They were taken back by it because they almost didn't know how to apply it. But what transcribed was being able to reach out to clients directly, freight forwarders, shippers, and really connect with them and say, look, we understand that your cargo is now moving to Los Angeles, it's moving to San Francisco, it's moving to Chicago. Why don't we put a pause on that and utilize this excellent capacity in our own backyard? And we got a chance to do that. The next thing that came up online rather unexpectedly to everybody, but it was a 2-month trial to Lima, and this went absolutely spectacular. The reception from both the Lima and the U.S.-based teams worked really, really hard, and there's a lot of positive feedback indicating that Delta is going to bring this flight back for a full season this upcoming year. Why does this matter? Because this is now a direct flight, a direct connection into Latin America. And from that connection, now if you're bringing freight on those wide body aircraft, you now have access points to 50 different countries from Lima. So these are the type of things that we're excited to see here. And the port supported this by connecting on the ground with the ground handlers called Talma in Peru, and working really closely with Salt Lake International to see where we could support here. Just really quickly, these are now the direct flights that we have. So you have Seoul Incheon, the Lima one most recently, but you can see that from an air cargo perspective, Salt Lake in Utah in general is really becoming not only the crossroads of the West, but the air cargo crossroads of the world. We are rapidly moving to seeing our dream of becoming an air cargo gateway. Just want to give you a heads up. This is now public information, so this is something really, really cool. Our next thing that we're involved in at the port. So like any good economy, you need competition in the market, and competition drives down prices, making it more competitive to do business here in the state. We are partnering with Salt Lake International and AVCO to build a 153,000 square foot neutral third party air cargo facility. And what does that mean? It means that this facility is specifically going to be catered and geared towards air freighter service and other carriers apart from Delta, like United Airlines, Air Canada, American Airlines, who would like to go ahead and participate in the air cargo game, but don't necessarily have the ability to invest in their own independent infrastructure. This is going to be a neutral facility that will be able to serve all carriers and really enrich what we're doing on the international space and air freight gates. Just going back really quick to that, the benefits and rewards that we see when we make investments like Korea. So we've seen 104% increase overall. And what's really cool about this number is the way we're tracking this is we can see where the freight was. So this was cargo that was being fed out of San Francisco. And the moment that we turned that lane on, cargo started not only leaving our own market, but it was being siphoned off of San Francisco to depart out of our own market. So just these are the kind of things that we want to see. We want to see more increased usage of our airport. These are things that you already know, right? We're number one in the state, but I wanted to show this slide because when we're out there doing the air cargo tour, this is what we're showcasing. We're showcasing all of the great things that is Utah. And so we'd like to go ahead and continue to, as Scott said, hear what it is, where your business pressure points are. I want to remind everybody that the Port Authority, we are not an operator, right? So we don't have a facility out there that we're actually shipping things, but what we can do is facilitate you and connect you with the freight forwarders or the community partners that we work with really closely to drive these solutions forward. And I'm always happy to go ahead and hear where your pressure points may be. So Michelle, that's all I have for today. I can turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Sebastian. I also appreciate you clarifying and reminding folks that the inland port is not a physical space. I think a lot of people still think that because this is kind of before my time, but my understanding is at one point that was kind of the idea.
Don't feel bad. There are some days I still think we have a secret space that Scott hasn't told me about.
Yeah, so I think that's super helpful for folks to know. I know it's been helpful for me to better understand the port over this last year and everything that you guys are able to do. And as you're expanding, the air cargo and logistics ability here in Salt Lake and across the entire state of Utah, it's really going to make it easier for businesses as they're figuring out shipping and supply chain issues. Are there any questions from anybody, either for Sebastian or Scott, or for Ben?
Well, Michelle, while folks are thinking of their questions, I've got one for Sebastian and team. So there are a lot of companies that are doing exports or imports to do exports, and this turbulent tariff climate has impacted sort of their mindset on where can I go? And, I think we've heard a lot about companies going on offense. So many cases about, okay, instead of just all this uncertainty and being paralyzed, I'm going to figure out how to go on offense, how to think about this. And it seems to me that if you're doing exports, you're probably doing imports. If you're doing, exports, you're probably should have the inland port on your radar. So there's like a soup here that's like, okay, this is a tool to go on offense for sure. If you're a business and you're doing exports and imports and what this looks like, and you're in an inland port area. So it's really helpful in that framing to think through why you guys are so relevant to be on this webinar. So thank you for that as a comment. And as a question, I'm wondering in this tariff climate, what you've seen in terms of folks involved with the inland port or potentially involved with the inland port, what you've seen in terms of impacts or changes in mindset for operations, or just generally how that's impacted your work at the inland port.
Yeah. So on my side, I would say the upside is a lot more companies reach out to us, which is absolutely what we want. Now they do reach out to us with the idea that we are operating a facility somewhere. So there is that correction of the misnomer. But what happens afterwards is we're able to connect them, listen to what their challenges are. And my background, I was a GM for DHL Global Forwarding, so I do know a little bit about the international shipping workflows. And what we can do is I can listen to whatever the challenges are. And I would say that 9 times out of 10, what we're doing is we're connecting them with a partner of really, really strong freight forwarders, and here locally. Who sometimes they're already working with, but in most cases, I would say, the larger companies, they already have their freight forwarders kind of locked in. But I'm talking about the medium-sized companies. Those are where we're getting the calls where they just don't know where to go. They haven't had to deal with these things conventionally. The nice thing about these local communities, community of forwarders, is they are embedded here. A lot of times they have customs brokerage solutions that they present. And this is where we kind of take that, we compile it, and we say, hey, look, this is who to reach out to. And I always invite them to give me a follow-up call in case they run into something that they don't understand. But I never get that follow-up call. So I think I've gotten once like, "Hey, thanks." That worked out pretty well. But no call is generally a good sign that the solutions kind of moved forward. And to me, we've pushed it in the right direction. The part two of that, Ben, I would say that's really helpful for us in terms of what's good for me, be it rail, truck, ocean, even brokerage. We don't know what we don't know, but I can tell you how solutions can come into the market. So if there's enough volume in any given commodity, the potential to go ahead and bring a freighter aircraft or a charter aircraft to go ahead and service the community starts to get really, really high. And that's something we are absolutely interested in seeing if we can facilitate, because we know that the market demand is there. We can see the freight flows, but it's just about keeping that door open. It's not something that we can turn on overnight. And the reason for that is that at Salt Lake International, we don't have that big, beautiful 150,000 square foot facility built just yet. So in order to plan something of that magnitude, the airport needs about 2 months, right? Which is not what you want to hear when you think about speed and charter. But we understand that, and that's why we're heading towards this facility, because once that's online, we could park a plane in the backyard tomorrow and drive these solutions. But in the meantime, we do have interim ideas to work together with the partners to bring those solutions to the market.
And let me just piggyback there from a business development side. 2025, we saw a precipitous drop in RFIs externally, and we also saw a strategy shift on the part of industry to become, from the site selector community, we saw them, instead of just tossing out what projects they had, kind of trying to drum out business. And I have an MPA. Social scientists are really good telling you what happens, but the why is a little trickier. Let me just postulate that there was uncertainty. There were uncertainty in the markets, and so investing in anything except for potential data centers seemed like a scary endeavor. Our wins in especially third and fourth quarter 25 and the things we chased were mostly local expansions where people were more comfortable or less affected by the instability on the international side. We have seen in just the first month of 26 kind of a relaxing of that nervousness, and we're getting a lot more inquiry about capital investment and expansion across all of the channels that we track, which is great. We hope that continues.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Scott. Thanks for sharing those trends. We are out of time. The contact information for our friends at the Inland Port has been posted in the chat. I see one final question from someone. We will answer that offline for you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Lynne, Scott, and Sebastian for being our guest speakers today. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you all next week. Have a good day.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the opportunity, everyone. Bye.